Hare Krishna. Gauranga. Happy Gaura Purnima to you all. So, one of the things that's really interesting is that Srila Prabhupada didn't like technology and modern things like that. He didn't even like refrigeration. He actually taught devotees, because like this day and age, when we pick tulsi, we keep her in the fridge. But Prabhupada showed devotees how to keep tulsi between 2 layers of wet cotton wool, and that way she stays fresh. Because he really didn't like refrigeration. So just like, I was expecting to have a song projected up here, but it's not happening, so I'm going to have to improvise. Yeah? And the same as like, last night, these were all illuminated, yeah, and look really nice. But today, there's some problem with the wiring. So, the joys of technology. Yeah. That's what happens when you rely on technology. Yeah. Okay. Toshan, do you know if there's song sheets for Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu? Is there many of them? Yeah. Okay. If I can have one and maybe just distribute a few. So, many times, while we're waiting for these song sheets to get around, I'll just sort of tell a little story. I heard this story the first time the other day. It's a really interesting story. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was once just discussing about the importance of Shastra and things like that. And he said, if you get caught in a flood, right, because I was just, my home was just caught in a flood. It had some pretty major floods up home. And he said, if you have 3 books, you have Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you lose the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Kavaca Prabhu, just close, it's too loud, please. If you lose the Bhagavad Gita, it's not so bad. And if you lose the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is also not so bad. But if you lose the Chaitanya Charitamrita, everything's lost. And we see, it's quite common within India and with those who worship Lord Krishna, that oftentimes we see that Janmashtami is the major festival. But actually for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, today is the most important festival. And I was going to sing the song, but at least I'll read the purport to it. And when we see in this purport that Prabhupada spoke about this song called the Glories of Garanga or Sri Garanga, he talks about why the appearance of Lord Chaitanya is so important to us. And then also I would like to speak a little bit on, or just read a little bit from the 2nd chapter of the Adi Leela, because the Adi Leela, Chaitanya Charitamrita, it has 3 sections: Adi, Madhya, and Antya. So Adi means the beginning, yeah, and Madhya obviously means the middle, and Antya means conclusion or end or final. So in the Adi Leela, the first 14 verses are talking about Lord Chaitanya. So the first 6 verses of Lord Chaitanya, then 5 verses talk about Lord Nityananda, then I think it's 2 verses talk about Advaita Acharya, and then the last of the 14 verses talks about the Panchatattva. So we'll do a different song from what I was planning, but nonetheless, they're all wonderful bhajans. And this is called Savarna Sri Gaura Pada Padme Pratan. And this is a song written by Narottam Das Thakur from a songbook called, it's put together in a songbook called Pratan. And this is a prayer to the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And you'll have to forgive me, I'm not very good at singing, but I do my best, yeah? But, what I lack in expertise we can make up for with the wonderful song that's being presented here. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Kora More Sri Krishna Chaitanya Daya Kora More Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Kora More Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Kora More Toma Bina Ke Dayalu Jagata Sangsare Toma Bina Ke Dayalu Jagata Sangsare Patita Pavana Hetu Tavavatara Patita Patita Pavana Hetu Tavaravatara Patita Mosama Patita Prabhu Napai Beara Mosama Patita Prabhu Haha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi Prabhu Nityananda Kripa Balokana Koro Ami Boro Dukhi Kripa Balokana Koro Daya Koro Sita Pati Adeta Goswami 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 Tava Kripa Bale Pai Chaitanya Nita Tava Kripa Bale Pai Chaitanya Nita Aha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunata Swarup Sanna Rupa Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunata Swarup Sanna Rupa Raghunata Bhatta Juga Shri Jiva Prabhu Lokanata Jiva Prabhu Lokanata Daya Koro Sri Acharya Prabhu Srinivasa Daya Koro Daya Koro Sri Acharya Prabhu Srinivasa Daya Korasiya Ramachandra Sangramage Narottama Dasa Ramachandra Sangramage Narottama Dasa Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Too late. Okay, so I appreciate your effort. Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you for. Okay, so this, as I mentioned, this is a song by Narottam Das Thakur, and here he's praying for Lord Chaitanya to be merciful upon him. And then he says, but because who is it that's more merciful than Lord Chaitanya? He's the most merciful, and he's Patita Pavana. This is the point he makes here. He's Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatar. So he's the most merciful incarnation of Krishna. And so Narottam, in the mood of humility, and a lot of the prayers you'll find, a lot of the prayers in Pratan are all about humility. And of course we know with Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his songs, he has broken his songs into all these different moods of worship, and one of them is dainya or humility. But here we see that Narottam Das Thakur, as with many of his songs, he's presenting out of deep humility that actually I'm so fallen. There's no one who's more fallen than me. But out of your kindness, you please bestow your mercy upon me. Because without your mercy, what can I do? I'm completely lost in this material world. And then he says that actually, he says, Patita Pavana Hetu Tava Avatar. He says actually your incarnation that was the cause. The Hetu means like cause or purpose. The purpose or the cause of your incarnation is to save the fallen conditioned souls. And then he says, but I assure you, Mosama, I assure you, Patita Pavana, there's no one, Patita Prabhu, Na Paibiyar, there's no one who's more fallen than me. So we can see that Narottam Das Thakur, out of great humility, is petitioning Lord Chaitanya to save him. But also, he's giving us an understanding of Lord Chaitanya's purpose. Because we know that if you read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's as I mentioned before, there's the first 17 verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is what they call a Mangala Charan, or it's an auspicious invocation spoken by Krishnadas Kaviraj. And in the first 6 verses, he's actually glorifying Lord Chaitanya and talking about the purpose of he's talking about who he is, that he's directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that he's come down here, and he gives 6 reasons why he's come. But one of the primary external reasons he gives is to save the fallen conditioned souls and also to deliver the Yuga Dharma. And this is why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so important, because he's actually descended to this material world to deliver what is called the Yuga Dharma. And for those of you who are a little bit familiar with the philosophy and the practices of Krishna consciousness, you'll understand that there's 4 ages. We have Satya Yuga or Krita Yuga, then we have Treta Yuga, Dwarpara Yuga, and then finally, the age we are in is called Kaliyuga. And each of these yugas, each of these yugas is epitomized by certain qualities. In Krita Yuga or the Golden Age, we see that people were very religious, and very, very pious, and actually they were just naturally inclined towards devotional service. But then as the ages progressed, went from Kali to Treta to Dwapara, from Satya Yuga to Treta Yuga to Dwapara Yuga, and finally to Kali Yuga, we find that in each age the qualities got less and less. And we see in an age like Kali, there's no religiosity, there's no cleanliness, there's no mercy or compassion. I mean, and you can see, just look around you. There's so much meat eating going on in this world right now, and that's a complete sign of lack of compassion. If you kill another living entity just for the sake of the tongue, this is so hard-hearted, and I remember years ago, I lived just north of here, up behind Coffs Harbour, and we were surrounded by beef farms, and I remember, because oftentimes the people they'll present, well, the animals are there for our exploitation. The animals, they don't have souls. The animals, they don't feel like we do, because they think the animals don't communicate or anything like that. But what we'd experience is a couple of times a year, the farmers would get all the calves, when they're a year old or something like that, and ship them off to the meatworks to be killed, to the slaughterhouse. And then they'd put all the cows up our end. And the cows would cry all night long for weeks, which is natural. I mean, any mother, if they take your child, what would you do? To send off to the slaughterhouse, you would start crying. You'd just be beside yourself with grief because your baby's been stolen from you. And this is exactly what the cows were doing. And they knew they were going to be making, they term it as noise all night long, so they put them up the other end of the paddock so they don't have to listen to it. Yet they don't equate that this is the mother crying for its lost child. So it's a very, very hard-hearted, callous society that we live in. And as a result of this callousness and this hard-heartedness, people suffer so much. It's like, when people are killing other living entities, particularly for the sake of the tongue, then there's so much karma associated with that. We see that Lord Chaitanya, his purpose, one of his primary purposes in descending, and we see also that, we were talking about this a little bit this morning, because in the Bhagavatam class this morning, it was talking about Diti was the wife of Kashyapa Muni, was praying to Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva, he's a very, very compassionate person. One of his names is Ashutosh. Ashutosh means he's very easily pleased, but also he can become very easily angered. But he's very easily pleased, and therefore Diti was praying to him and saying, actually, you're very merciful, you're very compassionate to the fallen souls. And so with this mood of compassion, Advaita Acharya, who is Sadashiva, and Shiva is an expansion of Sadashiva, or a manifestation of Sadashiva, he was praying to Lord Chaitanya to please descend, because Advaita Acharya was seeing in this world that the people were really suffering, and he felt that apart from you, my Lord, no one else can help them, no one else can save them. So he was praying for the Lord to descend, and then the Lord, he did descend, and he descended as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that's another story which we won't really discuss so much today. But it's a very nice story how he performed tapasya, where he was worshipping Tulsi Devi and Shalagram, and praying for the Lord to descend. All right. That other table's not on. Okay, so the song I was hoping to sing is, as I mentioned, it's called The Glories of Sri Garanga, and the Bengali name for it is Savarna Sri Gaura Mahima. Mahima means like a great thing, and so it means glories in this case. And I won't try and sing the song because we already did one bhajan, but anyhow, I'll just read the translations and just sort of elaborate on these translations a little bit. And so the first verse goes, anyone who's accepted the two lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya as his only asset knows the true essence of devotional service. So Narottam Das Thakur is explaining that the only way to understand the process of bhakti is to accept Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there's an interesting statement in the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Krishna's Kaviraj, he points out, he says, anyone who says he's a devotee of Lord Krishna but does not accept Lord Chaitanya, I say he's a demon. And anyone who accepts Lord Chaitanya but doesn't accept Lord Krishna, I say he's also a demon. So we see our acharyas are giving us a very strong statement to understand that if you really want to be a devotee of Krishna, you have to worship Lord Chaitanya. Because in this age, because Krishna came in the previous age into Dwapara Yuga when there was a different process of worship. Dwapari Paricharyayam. There was deity worship was the process. But not the deity worship we're doing here. This deity worship is really simple. You've got no idea. This is so simple. And if you look at the deities, all the jewelry they're wearing, you know what it's made of? Plastic. Right? When the Lord was being worshipped in Dwapara Yuga, it was all gold, silver, precious jewels. Even I remember, and some of the older ladies here, especially ladies from India, may remember these Banari saris, and they had the jari work on them. So all that jari work was originally made of gold. Nowadays it's just some plated plastic. And these Banari saris were handed down in families from generation to generation because they were worth a lot of money. Thousands of dollars, because it's all gold thing on it. Nowadays it's all just plastic and cheap imitations. So you can see that previously the worship was very, very opulent, very opulent. And so, sometimes in India you can go to certain temples and you'll still see there's a semblance of that opulence. Like if you go to Tirupati, for instance, a very, very opulent temple. There's a few temples like that. Puri also very opulent, but mostly these days it's they just don't have this kind of wealth. So, so to try and work, to try and approach Krishna or surrender to Krishna, from the instructions of the previous age, don't work in this age because this is not the Yuga Dharma. The Yuga Dharma, as we understand, is the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Hare. And by this simple process, and this is the process, Lord Chaitanya, he came to deliver this process, knowing the lack of quality in this age. There's a statement in the beginning of the Bhagavatam where it mentions that in this iron age of Kali, because this is the age we're in right now, is Kali. And each age has its associated metal. The first age, Satya Yuga, had the metal of gold. This age we have iron. Yeah? And actually, maybe they should call it the plastic age, because in this age everything's becoming plastic. Even the things we're eating with are plastic. Whereas if you look previously, everyone would eat on gold utensils. It's a very, very different age and very, very, very degraded. But the point that Narottam Das Thakur is making here is only that person who's accepted Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his only asset, or accepted his lotus feet as his only asset, my only wealth is the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that person understands bhakti. So a very, very important statement he's making here. And then he goes on to say, the heart of anyone who gives submissive oral reception to the pleasing and sweet pastimes of Lord Chaitanya immediately becomes cleansed of all material contamination. So another very important point is to give submissive oral reception. You have to have faith. If we don't have this, and Nityananda Prabhu, he makes this point that this is the beginning of the process of bhakti. You know, he talks about how he was engaged in, you know, we have these bhakti vriksha groups, or sometimes called, what's the other, Nam Hut groups. So Nityananda Prabhu was the founder of this. He began this process. And he would go out and he would distribute the faith, you know, the holy name to people. And the only thing he would ask is your faith. You just take this holy name, you accept this holy name, and understand that by chanting this holy name, you'll become God conscious and return back to the spiritual world. So in the same way here, Narottam Das Thakur, is you give submissive oral reception. And there's a beautiful prayer in the beginning of I think it's the second chapter of the Adi Leela, where Krishna's Kaviraj is praying to Lord Chaitanya to let the nectarian Ganges-like pastimes of the Lord flow from my desert-like tongue. So he's just praying. He's saying how these pastimes are so sweet and so relishable, and just let them constantly dance on my tongue. Because he's understanding that by being engaged constantly in speaking the glories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is the means to becoming purified. This is the means to attain satisfaction and happiness in this world. Because we see that in this world, everyone's endeavoring for happiness, isn't it? Who's not endeavoring for happiness? But how many of us find real lasting happiness in this world? And the conclusion that our Gaudiya Acharyas give us is the reason is because we don't look in the right place. We're trying to find it here within this body. But this body is temporary. And as Krishna points out in the Gita, he says, in this material world, everything is dukkhalayam ashashvatam. So dukkhalayam means it's full of misery. And the reason it's full of misery is because it's a shashvatam. It's temporary. It comes and it goes. I mean, you know, even like, okay, there's some of us here who are younger. I'm not one of them. And you know, I remember what it was like in my youth. I felt like I was unconquerable. I felt like I could do anything. Nowadays, you'll see when I get up from this seat, it takes me about 3 or 4 minutes to be able to stand up straight because my hips are giving me a hard time, and my knees are giving me a hard time. So that's the temporary nature of the body. When we're young, it's fine, it's great, stuff like that. But as you age, I was just speaking to one of the Prabhus before. I think he's out there serving prasadam, and he says, "No, now we're all grey-haired old men." It's a bit like that. You get older and you kind of lose your vitality, etc. And so that's the nature of this world, is that the body is just temporary, and trying to find happiness in something that's temporary is doomed to failure. So the point that Narottam Das Thakur is making here is you'll find happiness, by having submissive oral reception to the sweet and pleasing pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is where you'll find real happiness. And I encourage you all, and there's an interesting campaign, the BBT is doing an interesting campaign right now where they're encouraging devotees to buy copies of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I can't remember what the price is, but it's very discounted, right? It's like, none of the book distributing devotees are here, but you'll notice on the table out the front there, on this end of the table, there's a set of Chaitanya Charitamritas. That's the golden book. And there used to be, I think it used to be like 19 volumes, but I don't know how many it is now, because they reprinted them all and repackaged them, but it used to be 19 volumes. And very, very sweet pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Especially you read in the Madhya Leela, and it describes all the pastimes in a synopsis kind of a form. It doesn't go into a lot of the detail. Some things it does, but it also, one thing it does very interesting is it sort of presents the pastimes with a bit of philosophy, so you can actually understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness as well. So this is the point here Narottam Das Thakur is making, is by accepting the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya as your only asset, you'll get the true essence of the process of bhakti. If you really want to understand bhakti, then you need to accept the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What's going on here? 1 second. Okay, there we go. And Prabhupada, he makes the point when he comments on this song that Lord Chaitanya's pastimes are very pleasing because the basic principles of Lord Chaitanya's movements are chanting. We all like chanting, yeah? Dancing. We all like dancing, yeah? And what's the other? There's 3 things. Chanting, dancing, Krishna Prasad. And who doesn't like Krishna Prasad? Huh? Anyone here doesn't like Krishna Prasad? No, we love Krishna Prasad. So, and it's such a simple process just by these things. And we see, in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, they would constantly be engaged. Like you can read the Beda Kirtan pastimes, Lord Chaitanya's dancing in front of the Rath Yatra. You can read all these wonderful pastimes where they're always chanting and dancing. And then when they finish the dancing, what do? They all sit down and they relish Krishna Prasad. And actually we see that for 24 years of his life, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lived in Jagannath Puri in Orissa. And when he was there, Prataparudra Maharaj, who was the king at the time, and also he oversaw the temple, he gave the instruction to the temple that whenever the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates or servants, whenever they want prasad, you make sure they have prasad. There was just literally prasad on tap at any time. So we can see Mahaprabhu's pastimes are demonstrating these 3 activities of chanting, dancing, and taking Krishna Prasad. And it's such an easy process, and it's such a pleasing process. And this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us. And Prabhupada explains that if anyone's captivated by the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, simply by chanting and dancing and eating prasad, the dirty things in the heart become automatically cleansed. You can try so many other ways of doing it, and you can perform different types of tapasyas and rituals and austerities and things like that. But simply by engaging in chanting and dancing and taking Krishna Prasad, this cleanses the heart. What's that verse? Cheto daparam marjanam bhav maha devagninam sraya kaira vachandraka vitaram vidyavadriti anandam buddhivadaram pratipatam punam savatmasnaparam parang vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. So this process, this is described by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. This process, this Sankirtan process, is like, because the heart's compared to like a mirror. There's darpana, it's a mirror. Sometimes you'll see they offer a mirror to the deities, so we say Esha Darpa when we offer the mirror. So it's a darpana means mirror. So, and the Chaita means the heart, and Marjana means to cleanse. This Chaita, Darpana, Marjanam. So it's the process of cleansing the dust from the mirror of the heart. And just to give an analogy, if you take a mirror, like sometimes you see mirrors that have been sitting in an attic or a storeroom for many, many years, and you pick up the mirror, and what is it? It's completely covered with dust. And you try to see your reflection, you can't see anything. You don't even know it's a mirror. I remember a story I was told many years ago about this deity that the devotees were worshipping. It was in a family, it had been worshipped for many hundreds of years in this family. But they used to just, every day when they'd bathe the deity, they just pour water on the deity. That was it. They didn't really have any cleansing process. So one year they decided they were going to do a maha clean on the deity, like, a really big clean. And so they were cleaning. And after several hours of cleaning, they removed all the dirt from the cleaning. They actually found out that the deity was made of a semi-precious stone. And had been worshipping for hundreds and hundreds of years, and no one in the family knew that the deity was a semi-precious stone, because it was so covered with dirt. And so the mirror is the same. When you have this mirror that's covered with dust, so much dust you don't even know it's a mirror. If you look at it, you're not going to see your reflection. You're not going to see what you look like. So the same way for us, because here we are in this material world, and we have so many false identifications of who we think we are. We might think we're a man or a woman or Indian or Australian or whatever, cat, dog, so many identifications. I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. These are what are called upadhis. And through the process of devotional service, this is also described by Narad Muni, through the process of devotional service, he says, Savapadi vnina muktan tat paratvaina nimanam hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchite. When you engage in the process of devotional service, when you engage your senses, this is hrishikesha hrishikena, by engaging your senses in the service of the master, the Hrishikesha. The Hrishikesha is the name of Krishna, which means, Hrishika means senses, and Isha means Lord or Master. So Krishna is the master of the senses. So if we use our senses to serve Krishna, then he says what happens is sarvapati vinir mukta. Vinir mukta means to become liberated from. So, and sarva means all, upadi means a false designation associated with the body. So by engaging the senses in the service of Krishna, and this means things like, there's another beautiful verse, Atasra Krishna Namadi Navavid Graimindri Seva Mukhi Hijidevo Swayavameva Sparatyahara. It points out how you can't understand Krishna or his pastimes, his attributes, his form, anything like that, with these materially contaminated senses. It's only when the senses become purified that you can actually understand Krishna or see Krishna. So in the same way, it's only when the senses become purified that you can actually see the self. It's just like when the sun rises, like at night time, if there's no moon at all, and if it's night, okay, here in the city it's a bit different. I live out in the countryside, and when there's no moon at night, you can't even see your hand in front of your face. So if you ever come to New Govardhan, everyone knows where New Govardhan is, up in northern New South Wales. 2 essential items of paraphernalia you should bring with you: gumboots and a torch. Yeah? Because gumboots, because it rains a lot. I mean, we just had 1 year worth of rain in 3 days. Yeah? Had close to 1.5 meters in 3 days. So it gets wet. So it's really handy to have gumboots. Yeah? Unless you want to walk around barefoot, that's also okay. But also, when the devotees purchased the property, it had a nickname, Death Adder Valley. Yeah? There's lots and lots of death adders there. Yeah? But don't let that deter you, because no one's ever been bitten by a death adder. No devotee's ever been bitten by a snake, because if you circumambulate Govardhan Hill, Krishna guarantees you will never be bitten by a snake. Yeah? So when there's Govardhan Puja, make sure you circumambulate Govardhan Hill. Yeah? That'll protect you from snake bite. But yeah, so you have a torch so you can see what's on the road, because at night, especially when it's cooling down at night, during the hot days is not a problem, but at night when it cools down, the snakes like to lie on the road because it keeps them warm. Yeah? So you always keep a torch with you when you come to New Govardhan. Yeah? So the point is like, when it's pitch dark, you can't see your hand in front of your face when you're out in the countryside. But when the sun comes up in the morning, you can see yourself, you can see your hand, you can see everything around you. And eventually you'll also see the sun when the sun rises. So in the same way, when we're in the ignorance of illusion from this material world, we don't understand who we are. We have no idea who we are. We think we're so many things. But the reality is, as Mahaprabhu points out in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says, Jivera Surapahoy Krishnera Nitidas, Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beda Bed Prakash. That actually, Jivera Swarup, Rup means form, right? Swa means own. So our own form, our actual form, is Krishna Nityadas. Krishnera Nityadas. We're an eternal servant of Krishna. And as is pointed out in the Bhagavatam, you can't understand this by your own endeavor or by the help of others. You actually have to understand this through the practice of bhakti. And through the practice of bhakti, it becomes revealed to you in due course of time who you are. Talking is thirsty work. And actually, as being pointed out here in this wonderful song, we actually understand we're servants of Lord Krishna. That's our identity. And through serving Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this will become very quickly revealed to us. And so, if we become captivated by these pastimes and engage in chanting, dancing, and taking Krishna Prasad, then this dust becomes very quickly cleansed from the heart, very, very quickly. Because if you figure it out, okay, maybe it's 1 lifetime, maybe it's 2 lifetimes. How long have you been here in this material world? Countless lifetimes. Prabhupada says since time immemorial. We haven't been here eternally, we've been here since time immemorial, which means you cannot trace out the beginning. You've been here so long. It's like sometimes, when you have young children, and you're going somewhere, and they say, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" It's just, it always seems like too long. Or like, I remember when I was young, my father said, "Oh, you can." I think I wanted to drive the car or something. He says, "You can't do that till you're 18." And it just seemed like it would never come. When I was 6 or 7 years old, it just seemed like it would never come. But if you look at it in the perspective of the greater universal time, we have been here in this material world countless lifetimes. And so to give one or two lives, I mean, actually, if you take the process of Krishna consciousness seriously, it's one life. If you give one life to the practice of Krishna consciousness, then guaranteed at the end you'll go back home, back to Godhead. Yeah? And as it's being pointed out here, that it's so simple. You just become captivated by these wonderful pastimes. And if you read these pastimes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll find they are very captivating pastimes. They're just amazing, Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. I'm reading right now in my regular reading the 24th chapter of the Madhya Lila, and this is Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Sanatana Goswami. And it's so amazing, just the conversation they're having, the depth of understanding that's there. Yeah. And then in the next verse, he goes on to explain that that anyone who simply chants the name of Sri Krishna Chaitanya will immediately develop love of Godhead. I offer him all congratulations by saying, bravo! Yeah? You just take to the chanting of Sri Krishna Chaitanya and you will very quickly develop the love of Godhead. And Narottam Das Thakur is saying, bravo, good on you. Yeah? Or as we say in Australia, beauty, mate. Yeah? If anyone feels ecstasy and cries by simply hearing the transcendental qualities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he at once understands the eternal loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. Yeah? And Lord Chaitanya, he's so compassionate, he's so merciful, that simply by taking to the chanting of his names, you'll achieve pure love of Godhead. And actually, there's a discussion in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where it describes how by chanting Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Siva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda, that one can experience ecstasy. So then Prabhupada asks the question, so why don't we just chant that? Why don't we just chant rounds of that instead of chanting Hare Krishna? Does anyone know the answer? Yes, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he told us to chant the Maha Mantra. So the guaranteed way of success in spiritual life is to, as it says, Mahajana Yenagata Sapanta, to follow that path which is given by the great souls. We don't make up our own path. We don't think, oh, well, you can get this benefit from chanting, so I'm going to chant this mantra instead of Hare Krishna, because Hare Krishna will take me too long. Is it possible we could close the door, please? Sorry to ask. Yeah, so, you might say, well, I'm going to chant this mantra because it's not going to take so long, but you won't get success. You'll get success by following that path which is given by the great souls. And in this case, that great soul is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we see what happens in ISKCON is generally devotees will chant Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Siva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda in Kirtan. Just like we have an amazing Kirtani has just walked in the temple room, Damodar Prabhu. Hopefully he's going to lead the 7 o'clock Kirtan during the Arati. He's one of the best voices in ISKCON. He's also very humble. Yeah. But so when we start chanting Hare Krishna, we generally chant the Panchatattva Maha Mantra first, and then we chant Hare Krishna. Yeah? So Narottam Das Thakur is pointing out that anyone who simply chants the holy name of the Lord Chaitanya will very quickly develop love of Godhead. Okay, so then I'll go on to the third verse, and it explains that anyone who has understood that the associates of Lord Chaitanya are eternally liberated souls immediately becomes eligible to enter into the abode of Krishna. So just like this song we were singing before, it points out here, it says, Ha ha Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi. So, he's always absorbed in this Nityananda Prabhu is always absorbed in this prema, ananda, and he's happy. And actually, Nityananda is described as a direct expansion of Lord Chaitanya, and we understand that it says Brajendra Nandana says Sachi Sutta Hoila say Balaram Hoilo Nitai. So Brajendananda, this means Krishna, the son of Brajendra, the king of Braja. Yeah? Brajendanandana. So Brajendananda means the son of the king of Indra. Sachi Sutta Hoilo Se. He's come as the son of Sachimata. Balaram Hoilo Nitai. And similarly, Balaram has come as Nityananda. So that's described here. And then it goes on to say, Doya Koro Sita Pati. So Sita Pati, we know who Sita Devi is? Not Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman, but Sita in Mahaprabhu's pastimes is the wife of Advaita Acharya. So he's also a partial expansion of Lord Krishna. And then it says, goes on to say, Ha Ha Swarup Sanatan Rupa Raghunath Bhata Yuga Sri Jiva Ha Prabhu Lokanath. So it talks about Srup Damodar Goswami, the 6 Goswamis, and also Lokanath Goswami, pointing out how these are all eternal associates, eternally liberated living entities. They're not conditioned by the modes of material nature like I am. And then also it talks about Srinivasacharya and Ramachandra, who is a personal associate of Narottam Das Thakur, and how these are all great liberated souls. So Narottam Das Thakur is also pointing out in this song here that to understand that these personalities that are associating with Lord Chaitanya, even though sometimes their pastimes may seem a little bit unusual, and sometimes we see that Prabhupada would mention that Nityananda Prabhu was a most controversial fellow. I mean, sometimes the things he did were a little bit avant-garde, to say the least, yeah. But nonetheless, he was an eternal. He's actually the Lord himself. He's Balaram himself, and so he was just enjoying various pastimes. So it's a little bit hard to understand sometimes, but if we just accept, we have faith that he is one of the Lord's eternal associates, then this will enable us or qualify us to enter into the abode of Krishna in our next birth. And and also another very important point that is being highlighted in this song, it says, if one understands there's no difference between Gauda Mandala and Brajdham, because it's exactly the same. Because the Lord in his form as Gauranga Mahaprabhu performed these pastimes in Navadvip Dham, and then as Krishna he performed his pastimes in Vrindavan Dham. But it's Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radhe Krishna Nahayanya. There's no difference between the two. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna manifest with a golden form. That's all it is. There's no difference between the two. And similarly, there's no difference between their dhams. There is somewhat of a different flavor. Vrindavan is more madhurya, very, very sweet, and Mayapur is more adarya, very merciful, but essentially it's the same thing, and because it's the abode of the Lord. And similarly with the Ganga and the Jamuna, same kind of thing. So very, very important points there. And it also talks about the different types of siddhas. There's sadhana siddhas who become perfected by the process of bhakti. There's kripa siddhas who get the mercy, they become perfected. And there's also nitya siddhas. But when one becomes siddha, it doesn't really matter how you get there. So it talks about this point also, and how the associates of the Lord were all nitya siddhas, eternal associates. And whenever the Lord appears, just like there was a discussion this morning I was having with someone who was talking about how you can see that when especially, has anyone here been to France? Obviously you spent a lot of time there. So they have this, they've got this river there called, and please forgive me if I say it wrong, called the Loire. Is that how you pronounce it? That river that runs down through the... See, I told you I was saying it wrong. Yeah. And this is actually, and it goes through this valley, and it's called the Valley of Kings. And in this valley you'll see there's all these amazing chateaus. And what they used to do is they'd live in one chateau, and then while they were living there, they're building another chateau. And then as soon as that chateau was finished, they just leave that place and just move to the other place. The whole court would just move. And then in the meantime, another chateau is being built. And then when that chateau is finished, they'd move the whole court to that chateau. And they just go from one chateau to the next, the next, the next. So if you want to see some amazing buildings, it's a good place to go and have a look at these amazing buildings. I visited a few of them some years ago on my way down to New Mayapur. And you can kind of see the wealth and the opulence was there, but also you can see to a large degree the decadence that was there. But okay, so they might just come there with their whole court. When Lord Krishna comes, or when Lord Chaitanya comes to this planet, he brings his whole planet with him. Not just a few friends, he brings the whole planet with him. All his dynasties and his relatives and his children and his parents and his everything. All his servants, the whole thing. Millions upon millions of people descend from the spiritual world when the Lord comes. And we see that, and this point is being made, where is it? Damana probably knows this bhajan way better than I do. It says, Gauranga era sangi gana nitya siddhi korimani. So he comes with all his associates, and his associates, he says, nitya siddhi korimani. They're all eternally liberated personalities. And sometimes a little bit hard to understand. It'd be really nice if that door was closed, please. Thank you. So, and Narottam Das Thakur is saying, anyone who takes pleasure in sporting within the waves of the ocean of Lord Chaitanya's distribution of love of Godhead immediately becomes a confidential devotee of Sri Sri Radha Madhava. So just like we see, regularly the devotees go out on Harinam. So this is actually sporting in the waves of the ocean of Lord Chaitanya's distribution of love of Godhead. Prabhupada at one point he said that all my disciples, they're eternal associates of Lord Chaitanya. Why? Because they're engaging in this Sankirtan mission with all their heart. So the same when devotees are distributing books. I was having a conversation with Vilas Manjari Mataji this morning, and she was explaining to me, because I can't remember over what time period, but just recently they've distributed over 400 Bhagavad Gitas, and the way they do it is they have around I forgot what they call them, but they have these like boxes, huh? No, these libraries. They have like street library. There, that's what it is. They have these things called street libraries. We have actually got one out the front of New Govardhan, next to the letterbox. And what it is a whole lot of books there. You take one, you give one, right? So what they're doing is they're going around and just depositing Bhagavad Gitas in these street libraries. And so then people are coming and taking these Bhagavad Gitas, right? But so in the past few months, over 400 Bhagavad Gitas have been distributed. And actually, Vilas Manjari Mataji was telling me that one person has become a devotee from receiving one of these Bhagavad Gitas. So we can see how these activities are actually, because Lord Chaitanya came to distribute love of Godhead. So any activity we do that is participating in distributing love of Godhead is, as Narottam Das Thakur is talking about here, is sporting in the waves of Lord Chaitanya's nectarian pastimes. So if you really want to absorb yourself in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities and mission, the opportunity is there for you. You don't have to be very qualified. That's one of the, and this is the point that I was saying before, in this Kaliyuga. People, they have short lives, they're lazy, they're quarrelsome, they're unlucky, they're misguided, and they're always disturbed. This is the nature of this age. But if you want to actually be immersed in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, then simply participate in this Sankirtan mission. All right, I think we're getting pretty close to time. Should I take questions or just finish there? No? Okay. Okay, I'll take one or two questions. If anyone has a question at all or comment to make? Okay, not a problem. Oh, Prabhu. Yeah, I'm listening. You're probably more aware of that than I am. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes, Krishna makes this point in the Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Yes, very good. Thank you. Haribol. Sri Garanga Mahaprabhu ki. Sri Gaura Purnima Maha Mahotsavi ki. Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Damana Prabhu, please. Please kirtan.
Thank you, Nrsimha Kavaca Prabhu, for a beautiful lecture. May I request the devotees to please keep those blue sheets back in the rack? Please help us keeping those back. Thank you. Hare Krishna.